School is in. But are you really ready to learn? Open your eyes to a new day in education with the Awakening Educator, a program specifically designed to explore a new, mindful way of educating our youth. Learn about social-emotional learning, new modalities of teaching, and the most relevant topics in education with your hosts, Susan Andrian and Megan Sweet. Susan and Megan will take you inside the issues by looking at them from different points of view, from policies and research to teaching models that are actually used in schools. There's never a dull moment in this classroom. You can catch the Awakening Educator every other Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on Spreaker, Facebook Live, WDJY 99.1 FM, WTTA 101.2, Talk 10 FM, and many other platforms. You can also watch it on our app anytime from anywhere in the world at uimediaapp.com. Have any questions you'd like to ask? Maybe you have knowledge you'd like to share. Call 678-495-4345 and share your thoughts live on air. Grab a pen and paper and get ready to open your textbooks and minds to a new way of learning on the Awakening Educator.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Awakening Educator. My name is Megan Sweet, and my normal co-host, Susan Andrian, isn't with us today, but I have a lovely co-host and interviewee with me here. Her name is Jennifer Roux, and in a moment, we'll get into our discussion about Jennifer. Today, we're going to be talking about life after education, and so Jennifer started out as a school teacher and math coach. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then she became a school principal, and then left all of that behind and became a restaurateur. And now she's a highly successful restaurateur here in Carmel Valley, California. You'll also notice if you're watching us live that we are on location. So we are in the restaurant. That means that you might hear a little bit of restaurant noise every once in a while. They're getting ready for their dinner service. So you can hear some chopping or cutting or preparing for that. We're just really excited to be here. Before we get into the interview, I want to remind you that you can buy our Conscious Journal. Plan your day intentionally with the Seeds of Intention Daily Conscious Planner. To get that, you can visit www.unitedintentions.org to learn more. And I also want to welcome our friends at 99.1 FM and WDJY, and our friends from WTTA 101.2 in Kentucky and Ohio. So welcome, Jennifer, to the Awakening Educator. We're so excited to have you here. Maybe you can start out by just telling us what drew you to being in education in the first place. Why did you want to do that?
Well, I've always been interested in children. I'm the oldest of 14 grandchildren. You know, in every family video from when we're little, there's me with like my little ducklings behind me. I was raised by 3 generations of very strong women. And so everything was really centered around children and domesticity, and children have always sort of been attracted to me. Even in the grocery store now, babies are in a restaurant, they'll just kind of stare at me, and the mom says, I've never seen them do this before. So there's always been this attraction, and I just felt like I really wanted to be able to be of service, I guess, to children. Mm-hmm. And so education seemed like a natural fit very early on for me.
Yeah. And so how did you, when you started out in education, what were you teaching? How old were you?
Well, there was this, I grew up in suburbia, Arizona, not wealthy by any means, but I grew up in an area that was very cookie cutter, very clean, very produced, I would say. And at the time, I was moving to California because I was dating my college boyfriend who was going into law school, and he was going to law school in California. And so there was all of this media attention around what we would later call the achievement gap, and how there were children of colors that, you know, the light was being turned on, and, you know, the attention was being turned to all of these children that were just for, you know, generations not being serviced, and what was really happening in some of these schools. And I thought, I want that. And all my guidance, my degree was in psychology, and all my guidance counselors and everyone said, are you sure you really want to like dive into the deep end of the pool, like coming right out? And I absolutely, without hesitation, that's where I wanted to be. And so I started off in Richmond, California. And the first 2 weeks, I would come home into my little apartment, which was right down the street. So I actually lived in the neighborhood that I taught in, and would sit in just absolute silence with my jaw dropped and go, oh my God, I didn't know that people actually live like this. Seen it on TV, the dialect, the violence around, children coming in conditions of not eating or having clothes that they've been wearing for weeks. It was just probably the worst case scenario was what I was experiencing. And I said, I'm either going to quit right now, or I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to make this happen. And my personality is to roll up my sleeves and make it happen. Mm-hmm. I was given, I remember very clearly my first week of work, I was given enough scissors for the whole school, which were weapons, and a desk and a seat for every child, and chalk on the chalkboard. And that was all that was in my classroom. And I had about 25, 30 kids that were just, they couldn't sit in a chair. They didn't have expectations put around them. They were second graders, but they had lived a lifetime by that time. So that's how I got started. And then I became deeply committed. And I don't think if the situation wasn't so extreme, I don't know if I would have understood the necessity and the urgency. And I became immediately committed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot about your story is resonant of similar to one that I had, and many people, that they want to go into education and they want to serve, and then they're confronted with the inequities that exist in our country, the trauma and the challenges that so many of our kids face, and they feel so ill-equipped for that. And it's and you and I will get into that later, but we've seen that firsthand with some younger teachers or newer teachers that come in, that decision point. And I'm just wondering for you, what's one of those moves that you did that started to make a difference and helped you see the tide turning in your classroom? Or what's something that you locked into that started really helping your class to feel different?
Well, I think that the way that I was looking at them is they were children, and I never blamed children. I tried not to judge or blame the adults. And this is coming from me in my early 20s, and I didn't have the understanding of the world or the way that I should be treating people at that age, for sure. But right away, there was so much compassion that came through, and their basic needs weren't being met. I just remember coming in with giant bags of Wonder Bread and peanut butter. There was no even jelly happening. I was making less than $20,000 a year as a teacher, living in the Bay Area, even though I was in, this really rough neighborhood. That's the only place I could afford to live. And I thought I might as well be there anyway. But bringing in clean pairs of underpants, I remember that, feeding them peanut butter sandwiches every day, and just getting some basic needs down. I was a regular at Payless Shoe Source because my kids needed shoes. I mean, the shoes shouldn't talk, right? Mm-hmm. So I was, filling all of these basic needs for them. And it definitely didn't happen for a few years, but at a certain, you gain enough momentum with children and you show up for them every day, and they'll start to say, wait, what should I be doing for you? I can see that you're there. You're going to be there for me. You're consistent for me. I can come to you for food and a hug and whatever else I might need in the moment. So then they started to say like, oh, well, let's behave a little better. And not everyone did, but I mean, we're talking about like kids flying around rooms. It was that chaotic, and the principal was never present. But there were so many amazing lessons that I learned about myself and the world, and about the, systemic racism that runs through our country, that I had no idea, because I had never experienced it. Why would I have? And then just with every one of those, every step along the way, I think I just became more determined
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things you just said that really connect for me, but one of them is just that idea of food. And we're actually going to have a whole series on food coming up in a couple of months, and actually apropos to being here with you in a restaurant. But those basic needs and how powerful and important food is, and having how that can help open up kids to learning, having clothing that fits comfortably and that works appropriately. There's those little things that often teachers provide to their students that people don't notice or are aware of. So if you were to have any advice, if you were to look back on your younger self from where you are now, what would you tell her?
Follow your heart every step of the way. There were times where I didn't follow a direct order from a mentoring teacher who had been there for many years, and I realized they were sort of part of the problem. And if there's one thing that a teacher can do, if I could ask every educator or every parent or every adult, really, if you're around children at all, is don't ever speak poorly of a child, not only to their face, but more importantly, I would say, behind their back. I learned that the teacher lunchroom was a toxic place to be. It was horrible. And stop and think about not only what you're saying about children, but what you're thinking about them. Because we know now through solid research that if you don't believe in your kids, or you don't have adoration for, a child, no matter if you say, I think you're doing a great job. If you don't really feel that here and here, they know. And we know that now. Stanford's done an amazing job of proving that. It's like, if you don't have something to contribute to a child as an educator, then you have no business being there. So stop and ask yourself, wait a second, this is not about me. And, I was famous for saying this in Berkeley when I was there. You have your education. This is not about you. This is about making sure every one of our children are getting what they need. Right. So really stop and check yourself. Wait a second. We all get frustrated. It's easy to talk about children, talk about families, but it's really not okay. And we need to do that for ourselves and for each other as professionals.
That's beautiful. So I want to recap that advice, which is beautiful advice for your younger self, but also I think for any new teacher, we're going to have thousands upon thousands of new teachers entering classrooms in just a few weeks. And that idea of, I talk about it in my book around kind of knowing yourself and doing some self-work. So having that self-awareness to pay attention to those thoughts that are there, and making sure that when you're in front of kids and families, that you're aware of the judgments that you have and you're actively working with them. But also learning to listen to your heart and trusting what's important. We interviewed someone a few months ago named Dr. Larry Cuban, who was my teacher when I learned to become a teacher. Mm-hmm. He was my professor. And he talks a lot about something that he calls dilemmas, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like, you feel like there's something true in your heart you're supposed to do, or you're following what feels like the right thing to do in your classroom, and it's different than the external expectations that might be coming to you. So it sounds like even at an early age, you learn to navigate those dilemmas really beautifully, which is to listen to your heart. And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Even if it's someone who's older who purportedly has more advice, like we often know within ourselves the right truth. So that's a really beautiful notion to bring forward. In a moment, we're going to go on break. But before we go on break, perhaps you can share a little bit about, so you were in the classroom for a while, and then how did you get out of the classroom?
So I followed the statistics. At 5 years, I said, I need a break. I need to get out of this situation. I was in Hunters Point, San Francisco at this point, and I was being told that because of the color of my skin, I shouldn't be serving Black children, that I had no place there. And so I wasn't even 30 years old, and I buckled. I buckled under the pressure and felt like I'm not supposed to be serving these children that I love. I'm not supposed to be interrupting the systemic, oppression. And so I buckled under a lot of pressure from women who were all of color.
When we get back, let's talk about that, because I would love to hear more about, what happened there.
With all of life's stressors, it can be challenging to stay balanced and healthy. Hemp-derived cannabinoid, or CBD, supplements such as Plus CBD oil are becoming well recognized as a key supplement to optimize wellness. By working directly with our own internal system that maintains homeostasis, the endocannabinoid system, CBD, can help restore the body's natural rhythm when we need it the most. Learn more about Plus CBD oil and how to balance the system that balances you from www.pluscbdoil.com. That's www.pluscbdoil.com.
Hi, and welcome back to The Waking Educator. My name is Megan Sweet, and my beautiful co-host Susan Andrian isn't with us today, so I'm sending love and hellos to Susan. Today we're with Jennifer Roux, who we were just talking to about, she started out her career as an educator, and then she made a shift. And as we were going into break, Jennifer, you were talking about feeling some pressure to leave the classroom and what you were going to do about that. So you're being pressured to leave the classroom.
Yeah, so after 5 years, just like the statistics say, all new teachers leave after 5 years. I left after 5 years and went into biotech and pharma headhunting for a year, and realized how much I was missing classroom, missing children, missing having that impact. And I met a principal who was brand new at that point and who was tasked with closing down a school in Oakland, California, and redesigning it. And so she hired me as what was called a math coach at the time. And so I came back into education as a coach and ready to redesign a school. And that's when I met you.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. So Jennifer and I want to get into how I didn't realize you were doing big pharma before then, or the recruit. It's so interesting. So Jennifer and I met at the school that we were redesigning. So I would love to. It was actually, I wanted to talk with you about what that was like to re-enter in a school that was in so much flux.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was used to the flux.
Mm-hmm.
What I wasn't used to was a group of adults who were so committed to serving children and sort of breaking the wheel and rebuilding it. And that was so exciting. And I still, when I look back on my 14 years as an educator, that really is my favorite time. Mm-hmm. There will always be a big part of my heart in Oakland. And the work that we did there was so rewarding for me, and the results were amazing. I mean, we were breaking, all kinds of records around improvement in mathematics and at a state level. And so working with adults who were truly committed to children and the outcomes, not just in data, but creating a space for families and a community to be who they were and the best version of themselves, I would say.
It's so interesting to hear that perspective, because so the principal, her name is Monica Thomas. Monica and I have worked together for years, and our school, which is called Greenleaf in Oakland, we rebranded it from Whittier to Greenleaf, continues to break records and continues to be one of our most successful schools in the district. And when we got there, as you know, I think it was the second worst elementary school in the district out of somewhere around 60 elementary schools at the time. And it's kind of like the big question in general in education is like, how do you transform a school? How do you turn around a school? And so Monica and I have had this conversation in various iterations over the years, but I'm wondering from your point of view, and I'll tell you mine afterwards, but from your point of view, what made the difference? What made us successful when so many other schools were actually going through a redesign and turnaround with us and weren't as successful? So you named parents, but I'm wondering, like, what are the moves? Like, people always want to distill it down to like the playbook.
Yes. the true collaboration that we learned through the DeForce and, professional learning communities, but you'll hear me talk about collaboration anytime I'm talking about my business now or education, that first of all, we were all committed to, of course, the outcomes and the data. And I became very focused on that data because that was my job, was to make sure that these math scores were coming up and we were learning how children learn math and what really made the difference. But it was, I had ownership of math, right? And then we had a few different reading coaches that came and went, but they took ownership for sure. And then, I think that the principal did a really great job of handing us our responsibility and then saying, it's yours, report back to me. But we didn't know how we were going to do it. Like, we didn't have all the answers. We didn't have the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
We were sort of writing the playbook and testing it and failing and winning and learning and saying, okay, keep on going. So I feel like we were, writing the playbook as we went, which is an amazing experience on its own. And then understanding our learning is a lot how children learn. You don't get it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't take chances. But the most rewarding part, and I think the secret to our success, was the commitment to our children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's close to what I would have said too. So good. Yeah, we were teammates and we are good friends. So yes. It makes sense. When I distill it down, I think a lot of time I will say stuff like, well, we created systems, which is true, and everybody followed them. Mm-hmm. But it really started with the core team of us at the leadership level, where we didn't know what we were doing. We did, though, have some deep kind of, I don't know, maybe it was a survival trust, but like a deep trust in each other. Like yes. We got out of each other's way. We backed each other up, and each one of us worked incredibly hard. And we were just stubborn as hell, honestly. I feel like the main thing that was true was everything we put in place, we just kept showing back up. And when the resistance came, we just kept showing back up.
Yes.
And we held each other accountable. We held our students and staff accountable and families accountable. And we just kept showing up. And in doing that and continuing to show up, we also were vulnerable. I think we asked for a lot of help. We let families and staff come in and have ownership as well, and gave them that space, which I attribute a lot of that to our principal, but I think all of us also just maybe naturally had that belief. And so it allowed people to step forward and to start owning the school. And I saw these little turning points. So I don't know if you remember the first day we met, but I will tell you it was my most terrifying day. So my first day, Jennifer had already been there. The principal had already been there. The other assistant principal had already been there. And I came in late. I came in a couple of months into the school year. And my first day, everybody was gone, including you. And it was a rainy day. And I knew none of the rules because I was like my first day there. And I was leading the school by myself because the principal had to leave and the assistant principal had to leave. And I knew none of the structures. I didn't know any of the staff's names. Like, I was in big trouble. And the school security officer and the custodian at the time were definitely testing me and seeing what I was going to do.
No.
And so they wouldn't help me either. Like, they would give me little breadcrumbs of information, but not a lot. And I'm like trying to figure out what to do with the kids and rainy day recess and all the rest. And I did a terrible job. So I was like, kids were running. I got them all to the auditorium from lunch, but then there was like absolute chaos and pandemonium in the cafeteria or the auditorium. And the custodian and the SSO just stood there watching me because they were like, we're going to see what this woman does. We're going to watch and see what happens.
I love you, Miss Sammy and Miss Ann.
The point where I finally actually decided it was safer for the kids to be out in the yard when it's raining than inside the auditorium because it was just getting dangerous in there. And so just as I let them out is when you got back to the campus. And I remember you walked in, you were like, what is going on here? And in about 5 seconds flat, you had all the kids seated, a movie on, all safety restored. And I was completely humbled. But it was also my sign of the turning point is when the school security officer and the custodian then started again leaning in and offering help and stepping forward in a way that I knew very viscerally wasn't true when I got there, because I saw, but they were there and they were showing up and they were spontaneously offering for us to have special programs. And just the way that they changed, that's when I knew that we were on something at the school. It was also, when I fell in love with you, it was that first day when I saw just the power that you instilled, but I'll also say I saw all along the nurturing too. So the food in your math room continued on, so the kids could get food, but also the way you nurtured adults. And I'm just wondering how your approach to adults, like how did you translate your approach to kids with adults, or what were some strategies you used with the adults that you were coaching at that school? Because that same nurturingness, that same safety that you were talking about in your classroom, it was absolutely palpable in your office and with the teachers. And I'm just wondering how you did that.
Yeah, so my office was actually a book room that they threw a big table into, and then I found a laptop somewhere and then said, this is going to be my laptop, and that was how I set up my office. And so as teachers checked in the office in the morning and signed in for their day, got their mail, as they walked down the hall to either put their lunch away, they would walk by a door that led to a book room, and that's where I was housed. And I don't think at first teachers really knew what to do with me. I was younger than most of them. I was probably 29 at this time. And so I felt very early on like they kind of looked at me like, what is this whippersnapper going to be able to teach me? Or, why would they put her here? I didn't feel welcomed at first. I didn't really know exactly how this was all going to work, but I had so much faith in this principal who was even younger than me, that we were going to make this magic happen. And I think that anytime that you're learning, which I'll stop learning the day I die, we're all learning, we're all at different stages. And when I needed a task or a new logistic to happen with teachers, or I had to teach teachers something, I really looked at them as I do with children. And stopping, and I think the most powerful thing that I learned as an educator, if you're going to move someone forward, you need to stop and recognize where they are and meet them where they're at. Meet them where they're at so that you can walk along with them to the next step. And in math, it gets really technical really quickly. You talk about sub skills. You can't be on third grade math if you're still working at a kindergarten level. So assess the situation or just observe and find out where that learner is so that you can meet them where they are and then take the steps to bring them where you need them to be. And again, nobody really has all of the answers or the steps along the way. Like I said, we were learning from every pitfall that was there and writing the manual as we went. Mm-hmm. And aren't we just doing that in life too?
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, I think we are doing it just in life in general, but and the idea of following through. I do think one thing that I saw, if I reflect back to you, and I see it now, is that you really see people. And so as you're talking about that manual, I saw you seeing the teachers, and you created a space for them to also be real and to be struggling. And I'll say the principal did that too, but I watched you do it in a way that was really different and unique, in that you saw everybody, but you also let them be a wreck. Yeah. You let them cry, you let them be upset, you let them be troubled, you let them be excited and proud. And you journeyed on that path with them.
It was tissues and snacks. Tissues and snacks.
Tissues and snacks.
In my office for sure.
And I used them. More the tissues than the snacks, probably.
We all did.
It was rough. And you did that with your kids as well. So I also saw in the kids that were there, and deputizing some of our kids to be helpers, and just how empowered they also felt in the classroom. And so I just want to reflect back as somebody who got to watch all of that, the power of that. And for me, that just gets winnowed down to the L word, love, yes, which is often hard or awkward or uncomfortable for people to bring up in school settings. But it's so essential that we love ourselves, that we love our students and each other. So I appreciate that. When we get back from break, I would love to hear a little bit more about your kind of went a couple of steps more in leadership and education, and then you made this big change to being a restaurateur. So I'd love to, when we come back from break, to talk about that. But right now, it's the Awakening Educator. So thank you.
Good day, planet Earth. Michael Don Miguel Litton here in Roswell, GA. Join me every other Friday at 6 p.m. for the Ride the Vibe Show, the show where creative folks have the opportunity to share the genesis and power of their creativity, where they can intend having their talent being expressed all over the planet. Find my show on WDJY 99.1 FM on the United Intentions Spreaker channel, iTunes, Stitcher, and many more. You can also find my show on social media on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as United Intentions, and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Jump on the wave and ride the vibe. It's a cool way for getting the creative juices flowing. Cheers to a groovy day, and remember to always ride the vibe.
Hi, welcome back to the Awakening Educator. This is Megan Sweet, and my co-host Susan isn't with us today. We are with Jennifer Roux, and we'll get back to talking with her in a moment. But I want to welcome Metro Atlanteans at Talk 10 FM, and to remind you that you can watch and listen to all of our shows on our new smart app, which you can download at uimediaapp.com. And if you have any questions, you would want to say hello, ask Jennifer or I a question live on the air. You can do that right now by calling 678-495-4345. Again, that's 678-495-4345. And welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you.
When we went on break, we were talking about doing the school transformation work at our elementary school, which is named Greenleaf Elementary School. And that's, as you were saying during the break, that there's so much more we could talk about there. But I'm wondering, at some point you made a transition to being a math coach in general, like with the district, and then also becoming a principal. I'd just love to hear a little bit more about that part of your journey. So
in a nutshell, I was the coach at Greenleaf in Oakland, California, where Megan and I first met. And then I went on to the district level with an incredible math program called SWUN Math. And if there's anyone out there who wants to be a perfect, fabulous, amazing math teacher, or if you are a parent with a child, you should definitely check out SWUN Math, SWUN Math. Cy SWUN is the owner of the company, and he is the founder and works hands-on with districts. So in Oakland, I was lucky enough to work with him, and I had a principal who was able to be one of the founding schools in Oakland that could work with SWUN Math. And so through all kinds of group effort and PLC collaboration work with the DeFores and working with SWUN Math, we had so much success at Greenleaf that the district decided I should come and work in the district office and oversee the 45 elementary schools in the district and implement and bring some of the magic and the playbook that we did at Greenleaf to facilitate all 45 schools. And then we got a new superintendent, and that entire project just collapsed after about 18 months. The entire district office was pretty much leveled, and somebody new came in who was there for a very short amount of time, I want to add. And so as soon as that new superintendent came in, and I realized that all of this magic that we had, discovered wasn't going to be supported, Berkeley Unified School District right next door to us knew that a few of us were being started becoming free agents, is what I like to think of it as. So from there, I went to Berkeley and ran the entire math department by myself. Was able to do my master's at that point while I worked in Berkeley. That's a whole 3 shows on its own that we can talk about. And from there, completed my administrative credential, got my master's, and my next step was to become a director of instruction. And that's where I really wanted to focus. And my mentor, who I trust immensely, said, I think that you should probably follow, what everyone else does and go back into a site as a principal and spend a few years as a principal at a site before going into another project. And every part of my soul said, no, that is not what I want to do. I'm ready for this next step. I'm ready to be a director of instruction. And, but I didn't listen to myself, and I just admired her so much that I said, okay, I trust you. And she had been retired for many years. And while her knowledge and her experience was so helpful, the traditional way of doing things is not always the best way. Mm-hmm. So I spent 2 years as a principal in 2 different districts and did not feel like I was being utilized the way that I needed to be, and felt like I was no longer serving and moving numbers and closing achievement gaps and doing what I knew how to do, what I had grown into. And being a principal at a school where teachers were there for many years and not really interested in serving children was not the right fit for me. In the meantime, my husband, who's a French chef, was saying, I think I'm ready to have my own place. I'm ready to have my own restaurant. And I started looking at what I was doing, and I thought this was a good time for me to leave education. So we moved to Carmel Valley, where we used to vacation, and bought a restaurant, completely remodeled it. Within 2 years, 7 days, we had 3 restaurants, and we're 4 years into the project now. So that's how I made my transition from education to restaurateur.
Well, there's lots to talk about there. What I love that you brought up that I just want to put a light on for a moment first is this idea of, in education, there are these kind of expected next steps, and going back into the school is one of them. I've been guilty of encouraging people to do that as well. And the bind that you're feeling, again, actually in a thread that I could pull forward from your earliest days in a classroom teacher, is that your gut was saying something different. And Absolutely. What happens when you don't listen to your gut and you go outside of that. And so as a friend, I watched you trying to make that work and not feeling like it was in alignment. And then making this really powerful choice. And I will say, everybody, that she chose to leave education within a year of you finishing up all of your schoolwork. So it's this multi-year process to get your master's degree and your admin certification. And for a lot of people, that would be an incredibly difficult choice to make after you've put in that much time. You've built up your career, you've done all the steps. You're ready now. Actually, you could have gone back in and been the director of instruction at that point because you had done all the things you needed to do. To make a choice to pivot so profoundly is a big deal. And so I'm just wondering, what were some of the things that were happening inside of you, or how did you settle into that decision before you made that final decision to step out? What happened there?
Well, I think that this is a universal statement that no matter what you decide, you can always change your mind. I think in the beginning, my husband thought, she'll come in and help us set up our corporation. She'll help establish the restaurant, and then she'll step back out. And he didn't think that I would want to hang out with him for this long, but I actually love doing this work. But I had to have a certain amount of faith or belief in myself to be able to take that step and say, okay, a few $100,000 of student debt, to get to this point, just like you were just saying, working so hard to get to this point, only to say, okay, I think I'm done here. But I don't know that I'm done completely, because I know that I can always change my mind. I can always go back. I have been approached about doing some projects with schools in the area, and I'm not ready to do that just yet. We have some focus here that really, with 3 restaurants, we kind of need me to be here for right now. But that doesn't mean that later on I won't go back or do something in education. But so many of the threads that were in the classroom or in a district office or in, learning theory classes transfer over into this work so well. I have 35 employees and they're all learning along the way. We just don't learn about math anymore. Now we learn about wine and where it's grown and the best way to serve it and store it and, create matchmaking between wine and guests now, and making sure that every person who's coming through our doors now is being welcomed with warmth and having the best experience they can have.
Well, and again, I'll pull those through lines through again, which is as somebody who's been a patron at your restaurant and watched you do your thing. So again, I feel like I've gotten to sound like I'm a stalker now. It's going to describe myself like this creepy person watching you everywhere. But I've gotten to witness this part of your evolution as well, which has been a real honor. Is number one, like you learning to taking the risk, which I think often educators can be really scared about. So the first thing I really want to call out there is we get kind of locked in. And I've heard a lot of people say, whatever the career, but why I felt it was important to talk to you is whatever the career, people can have this like, I'm doing this, but what I really want to do is this. But especially as people get more and more successful and higher up in their fields, it becomes harder and harder for people to step away because they do feel like now they've just put in a lot of sweat equity, if nothing else. Yes. A lot of time, there's debt. So learn to step away and learn to listen to your instincts again is one of those things that I want to pull forward that I think is a real strength of yours that's showing up here. But also that nurturing quality. You've been feeding people all along. You've been creating that safe space for people to be seen. And I watch clients come in, customers come in, and how they react to you and how well you know each person. So you know so many people so well. And it's because you take the time to talk to them when they're here. And you express that interest and you do the matchmaking with them, with the wine and what they're eating or what their personality. And again, it's that care that I think has been there for you all along, which I really resonate with. And I know we've touched on a little bit, but I'm going to push you a little bit harder on how you learn to listen to that inner voice a bit. Because it's one of the things that I struggle with the most, that I look up to you the most on. Because I had that same moment, and I did step away, but I didn't step away as grandly as you did. But I had that like my bucket list educational moment or thing that I've been building towards was to work for the State Department of Education. Actually, I wanted to work for the U.S. Department of Education, but I found myself a few years ago at the State Department of Education, leading a statewide initiative. One of only a few people sitting around the table that were making decisions that were impacting millions of people. And I had this moment of like, oh, okay, I got here, but this isn't what I want to do anymore. And I had to make a decision, and I ended up stepping away, but it was a hard one for me to make. And I doubted it a lot. So I guess I'm wondering, you listened to that instinct, you made the jump. But I imagine it hasn't always been easy or hasn't always been like confident. Have you ever doubted your choice? Have you ever wanted to go back?
Well, I think my first leap happened when I was in Richmond. I was there for 5 years, and everything was about tenure at that point. Once you have tenure, you can do whatever you want pretty much, right? And I left my second year of tenure there to go work in San Francisco at a place called the Dream School. All of this, these resources were being poured into this school, and it was really in alignment with what I wanted to do as far as turning around, public education for children in these kinds of neighborhoods. And so leaving tenure was a big deal. And it's not like I called my mom and dad and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. They found out after I'd already taken the leap. And I think, again, stopping and thinking about, what do you really want? What is it that you really, can contribute? And just always knowing that you can change your mind. You can always change your mind. If you decide that you try something and it's not what you want, you can always change your mind.
That's a beautiful notion that the changes are possible, but also I think the more you take those leaps and what you're describing there, then the easier it is to take, because you find out that like the world doesn't come to an end.
Right.
You kind of survive that,
Mhm.
and you can take the next one. So I can see it as a helpful framing too, that like over time you've been building this kind of the muscle to be able to take the leaps and do that, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
In our last segment, I want to talk all about Roux, your baby restaurant, and how you went from one restaurant to 3 restaurants within 2 years, which is quite amazing. But right now, you're listening and watching The Awakening Educator.
Hi, my name is Beth Peters, Atlanta-based psychic, medium, animal communicator, and your host for the Psychic Soup. Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WDJY 99.1 FM. I bring in fascinating guests and touch on everyday topics, but with a psychic's twist. From high-profile psychics to psychic fanatics, I like to talk to people and learn how us psychics can help them in ways they've never dreamed of. Have any questions you'd like me to answer? Call 678-495-4345, and I'll be happy to take your call. You can also watch me on Facebook Live at United Intentions Foundation, where you can post your questions in the comment section. Find the Psychic Soup on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and many more platforms. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at United Intentions, and on Twitter at Higher Intention. So relax, take a deep breath, and dive into the Psychic Soup. A spoonful of psychics for soulful readings come true.
Welcome back to The Awakening Educator. My name is Megan Sweet, and my normal co-host Susan is out of town today. I just want to remind you that you can connect with us online. You can follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as United Intentions, and Higher Intentions on Twitter. And a new show, Match Made in Heaven, premieres on June 20th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, with numerologist Gloria Parker and astrologer Lorelei Robbins. With their passion for numbers and planets, Gloria and Lorelei will help you see and awaken the beauty, power, and genius that is you. And if you tune in later today for Ride the Vibe at 6 p.m., there'll be a musical guest, will be Ormy Woods. And finally, one last note, save the date, July 20th, there'll be a Gate City Brewing Company, sorry, everybody, in Roswell for the Awaken Atlanta celebration party. Join us for fun and a good time. Go on UI Media Celebration Party on Facebook and respond. Welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you.
When we went to break, I was saying that I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you took the leap to become a restaurateur, to open Roux. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And I did get to be on the ground floor and paint things and move stuff around. So I got to see this beautiful space we're in now before it was as beautiful. But also how you went from having one restaurant to 3 restaurants, and what that has meant for you, and what that's, like what your reflections are now, 4 years in.
Yeah. So I think if you're listening as a teacher or an educator, or whatever field you're in, that stopping and thinking about what you really would like to do. What is it that you want? Ask yourself why. I was lucky enough to have my husband, who is he's been a professional chef for 30 years, Fabrice Roux. He definitely was ready to have his own restaurant and had enough of the education, as we call all of his former positions. They were nothing but schools for him. No matter how hard the restaurant was or how successful the restaurant was, it was all about him learning so that he could have his own restaurant eventually. And I was coming from my background in education. And so I quickly found out that he was going to be doing the menu and the food, and we would collaborate on the line, and the rest of it was up to me. Not scary at all. I found it to be exciting, and I had the attitude of, well, I'm not really sure how to form a corporation, but I'm going to learn right now. And I'm not really sure how to run an entire HR department by myself, but I'm going to learn right now. I do have really great allies And I have a magical team that helps me. Gemini Professional Services in Oakland, California. Christine Turrentine is my money financial planning guru, and she has taught me so much along the way. But for the most part, I'm wearing all of those hats on my own so that my husband is able to flourish as an artist. And so I think that no matter what step you're looking to take, as long as you say, I'm not really sure how to do that yet, or I'm not really sure what steps I need to take, but I'm about to learn. So there were many, many learnings in that first year, and everything was so fresh in that first year. Categorical funding is not that different than an SBA loan through the federal government. So thank goodness for all those years of categorical funding with education and understanding how to see things sort of in buckets. That transferred over really well. The administrative part of education was not that different than the administrative part of owning a restaurant. And so one of the biggest learnings, the spiritual lessons I would say in all of this for me is, so we decided to sell our house, leave the Bay Area, bring our son, transfer our entire life. It felt like we were jumping off of a cliff. And I did it with a smile on my face. I knew that nothing that, worst case scenario, which I didn't even think about, wasn't going to kill us. We were going to go for this, and we were only thinking about what we wanted to happen. So the restaurant opens better than we could have ever expected. We were welcomed by a community that has just become family to us. It's been an incredible journey, and we couldn't have come to a better place. So, sometimes I use the dog analogy that you get one dog and you're like, wow, this is amazing. We should have 3 of these, which is kind of what my husband did. And he said, to be a national account, to, do all these other things, we should really have 3 restaurants. And he felt that way pretty early on. And as a new mother of a restaurant, I was exhausted and kind of looked at him like, okay. I wasn't as excited about having 3, but he said, I want 3. And I said, okay, whatever you want. So we went from 1 restaurant to 3 in 2 years and 7 days. And no, we're not independently wealthy. This was very, very stressful. We had to pool money from many different sources within ourselves and not take on any partners, which is another, I think, mistake that people make when they're trying to have their own business, is having a partner. For us, it was not an option, just because I had learned from my father's lessons of having business partners over the years and seeing other chefs that were taken advantage of. So we had to take all these risks on our own, which made it more personal and even better, I think. And so very quickly after having 3 restaurants, I realized that 2 would be better than 3. So here comes that theme again: stop, monitor, adjust, right? You can always change your mind. So we expanded very quickly. I realized that I didn't want to have 3. That wasn't serving me or my family. It was not what was going to bring me joy. 2 sounded like a better idea. So just as we expanded, I decided to contract, and we did. That can make you vulnerable in the public eye as saying like, oh, the 3rd restaurant didn't work, or, there are wolves waiting always, right? Always critics. And I had to put those out of my mind completely. Those aren't the voices that matter. It was an opportunity for another chef to come in and have his own restaurant. And it brings me so much joy to be able to give him that restaurant. And he is thriving. But really, when you're taking chances and you're thinking, some people will say, well, think about what the worst case scenario would be. I say don't. I'm able to take chances because I do so with some amount of caution, but I listen more to, what do I really want? What do I want to be able to contribute? How can I take this chance and make sure that I'm asking everything that I want to see in the outcome? Because I didn't, when I would say, we want to open our first restaurant. I would never say we want a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I would say as if it was already there, but I would say we own a very successful restaurant.
Right.
And really giving her intention and expectations before she was even created.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they are like children.
Mm-hmm.
So when we would be run over in the beginning, I would be on one side of the kitchen window and my husband would be cooking on the other side. And he would look at me and say, "What did you do?" There's a line of people out the door. And
I'm successful.
Yes. And so I looked at him and I said, "I told you I wanted a successful restaurant, not just a restaurant." And we would have a little giggle and move on about the day. But really, no matter what it is that you want to do, really thinking about how it's going to feel, what you want out of the experience. And of course, we have sort of those voices that come in and say, "Oh, but you could lose your entire life savings," which we could have done. I mean, we went all in with this. That is not what you're looking to create. So don't think about that.
Right.
Let that go. Grow as much as you feel comfortable growing, feel empowered to take risks, and just know that you can always change your mind.
That's such a wonderful message. You're touching on a few things that resonate for me because I wrote about them in my book. But this idea of there's this intellectual part that is really helpful. It gives us lots of really good tools. We know how to, with our intellects, we can run a restaurant. We can do all the math and the figuring out how to do HR and all of that stuff. But you need to also stop and listen to your intuition, which sounds like you do on a regular basis. You check in, you pay attention, and you also use your insight, which is being able to be reflective and understanding what doubts might be showing up, but also what you want. And when you put all three of those together, you really have a powerful combination to create these opportunities for yourself and to not doubt. And I love that phrase. I'm going to be walking away with it, you can always change your mind. And for me, I often get very fixed. And I think that's, especially when the intellect comes in or when fear comes in, we can become almost like deer in headlights and get fixed. And you and your husband both move with so much fluidity in this space and have just stepped forward into so much growth and expansion, but you've retained yourselves and who you are so much, which is something really special and unique about you. Not everybody does that. So I'm so grateful for you for sharing this journey with us today. And in this beautiful restaurant, I encourage everybody to please, if you're in Carmel Valley, please come and visit the Roux restaurant. It's their last name and the name of the restaurant, which is just too perfect for a French chef. You also have your own whiskey, is that right?
That is right, yes. So we were lucky enough to be invited to Maker's Mark last year, and we created our own blend of whiskey. We didn't just buy a barrel, we actually made our own, and it's Roux Select, R-O-U-X, Roux Select. Edition number 1 is the first barrel. There will be other barrels coming.
Oh, wow. And
yes.
Where do you get that? Can you get that online?
You can only get that at Chop House,
okay.
Carmel Valley Chop House. And if you're interested in visiting Carmel Valley, make sure you look at hashtag A Perfect Day in Carmel Valley.
Okay.
It's a great place to rest and relax. We loved it so much that we actually moved here. This used to be our vacation spot.
That's right. I remember when you moved. I'm still a little bit upset about it because you moved away from me. So please, again, come to Roux Restaurant or go to the Chop House if you want to especially try the whiskey. It's a really wonderful, nurturing place to be. I want to thank Susan, I miss you. I'm sending you a big giant heart and love. Thank you to No Small Children for the music. Thank you to United Intentions, Wahid, and the whole crew for your wonderful sound. Thank you again, Jennifer Roux. And please, if you want to check us out, go to www.your3eyes.com. We have a whole section there for the Awakening Educator, and you can also learn about the other ways that you could connect and work with me, including online courses, ways to get my book. And I even have some coaching spots opening up. So if you want to get some personal coaching on your intuition, it's all there. So thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you all very soon. So thank you again.
Class is dismissed. Wasn't that fun? Susan and Megan are always happy to greet you on the next episode of The Awakening Educator, every other Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Watch all our shows anytime from anywhere in the world at uimediaapp.com. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spreaker at United Intentions to be up to date with the show. Have any questions you'd like to ask? Maybe you have knowledge you'd like to share. Email us at contact@unitedintentions.org, and we will read your comments live on air. Education is the foundation for a brighter future. Open your eyes to The Awakening Educator, only on the UI Media Network. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests.